All right, I am here with Michelle Cramer. This is another segment for Run Radio called Tell Me More. And you're involved with a lot of things, but we're going to start with your passion project, if you will, called On Angels' Wings. So, how long have you been into this project? And how did it all begin?
How did it all get started?
How did it all
I started on Angel's Wings 9 years ago. It is a project that came out of the empath in me. So I'll go way back. I'll go way back to 15 years ago.
Ooh, okay.
Way back. When my son was born, I was a very naive mom in the sense that I thought once you make it past those first 12 weeks of pregnancy with no problems, everything will be great. It was a very normal pregnancy, no problems. He was born perfectly healthy. And then about a month after he was born, there was a segment on the Today Show about a national organization that did birth loss photography. And I was literally holding him and sobbing, just like thinking about how I got to bring my baby home and he's perfect and healthy, but these parents don't get that opportunity. And as I had been a photographer for about a year at that point, and as a new photographer, like this was just a beautiful way for me to give back. So I got involved in the local chapter for that organization and did so for about 18 months. And learned from that experience, like some things that I wanted to do. Like a lot of things that they did were, I mean, it was amazing what they did. They worked with birth loss and they would, for me as an empath, there was no support provided by that organization. And I just felt like we were just leaving these parents hanging. They would go and try and have to figure out how to move forward on their own. And that just broke my heart. Like it was just so hard for me to just walk away. And I just really felt like there were more circumstances than just birth loss that needed this kind of care and compassion. So fast forward about 4 years and one more kid. I was introduced to a little boy named Logan. And he had spinal muscular atrophy. And this is a condition where the muscles begin to deteriorate from birth. It's the #1 genetic killer of children under the age of 2. And his mom asked me to come to their home and do like a lifestyle session because there's really no treatment at the time. They were just doing a palliative approach with him, and she created like a bucket list of things that he would get to miss out on in his childhood. And so the day that I was there, he touched dirt and mud for the first time. So she put 2 little Tupperware containers. She held him in her lap and put 2 little Tupperware containers on her lap with him. And he was touching and feeling it. And he thought it was cool. And then he got overstimulated and he mustered. Now, mind you, he was about 6, 7 months old, but he couldn't hold up his head.
Okay.
So he mustered all of the energy that he had and he threw those Tupperware containers off her lap. But you like saw him like work for it. And then when he did it, he just cackled in this big, huge, beautiful laugh. And I captured that moment, and it just will be forever embedded in my mind, because to that point I had only been connecting with the parents, but then I had this moment where I was connecting with the child too, and capturing joy in the midst of their sorrow. About 3 months later, he got worse, and I did a goodbye session for the family, and then I went to the funeral, and just kind of left there just sobbing. And at that point, like I had heard for 4 years from God, yes, but not now on this. This is something I have for you, but it's not time. And I left that funeral just begging God, like, please, please, I'm ready. I need to do this. And I felt like I had the yes. And I like went home and told my husband, like, I'm registering this organization. Like we're doing the paperwork right now. And he's like, let's go.
Let me back up a little bit
Yeah.
first, if I can. Like, if someone has never heard of this still may be new to somebody. Birth loss photography.
Yeah.
So it sounds very sad and dark, but I know you spin that to make it a very special thing for those that are still here on Earth. So can you explain that just a little bit?
Yeah, sure. And just a little bit, like on Angel's Wings, we provide therapeutic photography and ongoing grief recovery support for families with a medically fragile child or who have lost a child at birth. And yeah, absolutely. When we started the organization, there was just like a cloud of grief and just people just did not understand. So our motto is celebrating life and encouraging hope. And that celebration of life is every life, no matter how short it may be, because those children are desired and wanted, and it's just a tragedy for those parents. And then the ongoing support is that effort to encourage hope for those families as they move. We never say move on, but move forward with life, grief attached to their life.
Okay, that's a very interesting perspective, very necessary perspective, if you will. I think that's good for everybody to take on.
Yeah.
All right, so you're at this point where you've decided we're doing the paperwork, we're going forward. Then what? Did you freak yourself out? You're like, oh no, I committed.
No, I'm the kind of person who, when I've decided I'm doing something, I will push through every circumstance to get it done,
Great.
even if it takes me a very long time.
Awesome.
So I was full in. That was in July. By October, I was going to like women shopping events and just trying to get the word out any way that I could. And so that was like 2013 seemed to really just be like getting the word out about our services. We did a few sessions, but it was just more about establishing relationships with the hospitals and things like that. And then 2014, just to kind of give you an idea of how we've grown in this time, 2014, we did 41 photo sessions. And we now currently average about 200 sessions a year.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So, and we
Wow.
started in Springfield because when I left that previous organization, like the Springfield chapter of that organization dissipated because no one wanted to take over. And so Springfield had no services. So when we started, it was just to make sure that Springfield had services. And then we would see families whose child would get a pre-diagnosed condition in the womb who would go to St. Louis for care. And so then they deliver in St. Louis and we'd need photographers there. And so it just continued to snowball in that way to where about 45% of what we do is in Springfield, 45% of what we do is in St. Louis. And then the rest is we've got Kansas City, Joplin, Rolla, Cape Girardeau, Clinton. So we're in a variety of places around the state. I've got about 60 active volunteer photographers. And we're seeing, like I said, about 200 sessions. We've done almost 1,200 sessions to date in the 9 years.
And do they typically reach out to you or do you ever approach?
So it just kind of depends. We work very closely with the hospitals. I'd say a large portion, about 80% of what we do is those birth loss or imminent loss where the child has a pre-diagnosed condition in the womb that they're not going to survive. So in those cases, the hospitals reach out to us, or if they've been pre-diagnosed in the maternal fetal medicine high risk department, we'll tell them about us and they'll reach out. The rest of it really just comes through community awareness and somebody who knows somebody who needs us. And so then they just pass the word on and families come to us directly in that sense.
So I do believe it takes a special person like yourself to do this kind of work because it's very emotionally driven for both sides. So how is that for you are you good at leaving work at work or does it emotionally drain you for a while and for how long?
Yeah, it just depends. Being that I'm an empath, and I don't say that lightly, like I generally feel a change in the room when someone's mood changes or when someone's upset or grieving. I've also had like a lot of people have difficulty being around me when they're grieving because I almost can like mirror that. They can see that through me because I don't really know how to explain it. It's just this weird thing that I'm able to do. So, one would think that that would make it more difficult to be involved in these moments. For me though, it's always just been about the fact that what I'm going through is nothing compared to what they're going through. And I just set self aside, knowing that this may be the one opportunity that they have to have something to hold on to. Um, and really just not going into those situations stoic. That's what we train our photographers with. It's very important that we go in emotionally open, because these families, especially in a loss setting, are dealing with maybe compassionate staff, but staff who've seen it so many times and are so focused on their job
Right.
that it doesn't open up that freedom to really feel. And so when we walk into the room, the idea is to give them space to truly feel what they need to in that moment. I distinctly remember a family that I've remained close to. I did their loss session about 4 years ago. And mom said, it was chaos and confusion, and we didn't know what to do or how to process or how to move forward. And then you walked in the room and a light shone off of you, and you gave us the space to process. You allowed us to feel what we needed to feel. You had a conversation with us when we had questions on what do we do next. Like, you opened up, um, and it just really impacted them. So like going in there open and willing to cry. Like, there have been moments, another another example, I did a loss session, and we try, because of the vulnerability of the families in these moments, we actually don't allow photographers to profess their faith, just because even someone who carries a faith and a relationship with God, it is a really difficult moment for them because they're questioning everything. And we just don't, like, you never know what somebody could say that could change that to
Mhm.
the negative instead of the positive. So we just go in there and show them love, essentially. But I had a couple a year or so ago, and they were listening very quietly. There was worship music playing in the background. And as we were doing a picture of both of them holding the baby, and it was their third loss.
Mm.
Um, um, This Is How I Fight My Battles came on the radio. I get chills even now because we
Mhm.
all just started bawling.
Yeah.
And I had to like take a moment, and we were just all crying together. And that mom in particular has told that story herself multiple times over because of the impact that just allowing them to grieve in that moment and grieving with them made on her. Um, so that's all these families look for, is somebody that gives them permission to feel what they want to feel in that moment.
Have you had very many people come back to you after a session just to tell you how precious those pictures were and are?
Yeah, constantly. We actually, because of our support system, we work really hard to stay in touch with our families and give them every opportunity to stay connected with us. So we, continue to have like events on that celebrating side. We try and do things that are celebratory. We have a carnival every year that our recipients go to for free. And um, so we try to stay connected with them. And so you have opportunity for those conversations where they share the impact that those images have made. And we hear frequently how cherished they are.
Good. Well, how can the community be supporting you right now?
So On Angels Wings is a volunteer ran and donation supported organization. So our website is oawphoto.org, and you can just scroll to the bottom of the page and donate that way. We it's really, we have a wonderful community where a lot of wonderful and beautiful nonprofits come out of, but our nonprofits per capita in this community is pretty high. And
Yeah.
so even 9 years old, we're still considered grassroots, and it's just it's a little hard to be seen. So those donations are really, really valuable to us on a personal and financial level. And
Mhm.
we worked so hard to continue to provide better services at all times. Like in 2020, my vice president and support coordinator, she and I became certified grief recovery method specialists.
Mhm.
So we now have a dedicated 8-week program that we take our recipients through to help them learn coping mechanisms and to get past those societal myths of like, you need to grieve alone, you need to keep busy and be distracted, you need to replace your grief with something else. So we help them get past that and like fully acknowledge the emotions that they feel in their grief. And we've seen about we were able to start doing those in 2021 because of COVID,
Right.
and we've seen about 20 people go through that program with us. And in that, we opened our first physical location in 2021 as well, that serves both as a studio for those medically fragile children that need a safe space to get pictures done, and then a meeting space for our grief recovery groups. So, we took a big leap of faith to do that. The Lord has continued to provide, but it's always tight.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. We'll make sure people know that. Can someone who might not have connected with you already, but have suffered a loss, can they still go through that grief program?
Yeah, so we do have opportunity to go through it as a community member. We do offer a discounted session, extremely discounted for our recipients because we want to make it available to them. But we do have community opportunities for that where we do charge a fee so that we can continue to bring in funding for the organization.
Can you give us one little freebie? Can you give us one of the biggest misconceptions about grief that society could do better at?
Well, well, way to transition, Trina. I wrote a book on it.
Yes, we need this book. What's it called?
It is. I have it sitting here with me. I'll
Let's-
grab it so you can see it. It is called Unshattered Grief.
Yes.
I spent 5 years working on this book. And it came out of, the subtitle is Helping Others Through Loss Without Breaking Them Again. And the concept is, you see the vase. I have a wonderful artist do this illustration for me. And the concept is that when someone grieves, when they've had a tremendous loss, they're like a vase that's been shattered, and then you try to put it back together again. And then we as a society say and do things where that vase is just like teetering on a shelf, because grief is just so fragile. We need to be the hands that catch it rather than the hands that let it fall. And we tend as a society to try and help and say and do things that we think are helping, but they are absolutely not helping at all. I think one of the more common ones with what we deal with is, at least you have or can have other children.
Oh,
And we've had families hear that multiple times over. Or God has a plan, and he indeed does, but even somebody of faith does not want to hear that when their deceased child is laying in their arms.
oh my goodness. Right. Exactly.
So it's just the book itself is a sharing of stories from recipients, through the organization, but also like a very good friend of mine who lost I have two friends in there actually who lost their spouses, friends who've lost parents, siblings, things like that, where they are sharing, what people have said and done. So that's hard for me to say any one thing that people do because there's a whole list of.
Okay. Okay. Well, we will get that book. It's already available on Amazon.
It is.
I've started reading for our next conversation. So if anyone listening wants to go ahead and start reading up, we're going to have a conversation about that. We'll let you know when it's available. But thank you for now for updating us about On Angel's Wings, how we can support you, and we'll talk about the book soon.
Great. Thank you, Trina.
Thank you.